When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when his wedding would take place, my daughter-in-law Lena looked me directly in the eye and said with a cold smile, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Her words struck me like ice water. Special people. I, who had spent 3 years paying their monthly rent of $500, furnishing their house piece by piece, and filling their refrigerator whenever they had nothing to eat, was not considered a special person. I stood frozen in my own living room, the phone suddenly feeling as if it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand, watching my son avoid my eyes while Lena stretched herself comfortably across the sofa I had purchased for them. The pale pink dress I had chosen for her wedding day remained hanging uselessly in my closet, together with the new shoes and the illusion that I would be part of the most important day in my only son's life. I had spent $200 on that dress, imagining how nice I would look in Max's wedding photos in which I would never appear. For weeks, I had planned every detail. I had set aside $1,000 to give them as a wedding gift. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago to share the wonderful news. I had scrubbed every corner of my house, hoping they might stop by to celebrate after the ceremony. All of that collapsed in a second, crushed by those 4 poisonous words. Only special people. Max finally lifted his gaze and spoke in a voice that sounded carefully rehearsed. "Mom, it was an intimate thing, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses." But I knew it was a lie. I had already seen the photos on social media. I saw Lena's parents standing proudly beside the bride and groom. I saw her siblings raising champagne glasses. I saw Lena in her white wedding dress, the same one I had unknowingly helped pay for with the $800 I had given her last month for personal expenses. I saw everything I was never meant to see. Exactly 1 week later, 7 days after that humiliation, Lena called me with a voice completely unlike her usual confident tone. Gone was the triumphant woman who had excluded me from her wedding. Now she sounded desperate, almost pleading. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us. He says if we do not pay this week, he will evict us. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice trembled as if the world were collapsing around her. I stayed silent for several seconds, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to ensure that transfer was made, all the times I had canceled my own plans so they would have a roof over their heads, all the times I had eaten nothing but beans and rice so I could fund their desires. And now, after excluding me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the nerve to call as if nothing had happened. "Lena," I said calmly, surprising even myself, "did I not warn you that I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, it was not me trembling. It was her. "Renate, I do not understand," she stammered. "We were always special to you." "You are like a second mother to me, lies. Nothing but lies." Wrapped in that sweet voice she only used when she wanted something. The same voice she had used to ask me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings, all of which I had helped finance without realizing I would never see the ceremony where they were exchanged. For so many years I had walked on eggshells, weighing every word, every gesture, every gift, all in hopes of receiving a crumb of affection from my own son. I had been the perfect mother, the accommodating mother-in-law, the silent provider who never protested when treated as if I were invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," awakened something inside me that had long been buried. I began calculating in my mind the true cost of those 3 years. Between rent, food, gifts, emergencies, and whims, the total was more than $20,000. $20,000 I had drained from my retirement, my savings, the inheritance my late husband had left me so I could spend my later years in peace. And what had all that sacrifice achieved? To be treated like a stranger on my own son's wedding day. That night, after I ended the call, I sat on my bed and cried. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of fury, of long-suppressed frustration, of years of humiliation endured in silence. I cried for all the times my love had been treated as a burden, my presence as an inconvenience, my money as my only value. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, for the woman who had lost herself trying to be indispensable to people who saw her as disposable. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, something inside me had shifted. It was not just the sting of betrayal. It was something deeper, colder. I rose and faced my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The same weary eyes, the same wrinkles etched with years of giving love without receiving it back. But there was something new in my expression, a hardness, a determination that had been buried under years of compliance. I brewed coffee in the kitchen, as I had done every morning for 4 decades. But this time, I did not think about calling Max to ask how he had slept. I did not check my phone in anticipation of an apology message that would never come. For the first time in years, I placed myself first. I sat at the table where I had so often counted money for their expenses, planned surprises for them, and cried quietly at their indifference. Now that table would witness something entirely different. I spread out my checkbook, my bank statements, and began to do the math. I needed to see, in cold numbers, the extent of my foolishness. Rent at $500 per month for 36 months, $18,000. Food and household supplies, approximately $200 per month, $7,200. Gifts for birthdays, Christmas, and anniversaries, at least $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. The unpaid car loan, $2,500. The air conditioner repair, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. In total, $33,400 that I had wasted from my pension, my husband's inheritance, and the savings I had scraped together penny by penny through decades of work. All of that money squandered to maintain the comfort of 2 adults who could not even pretend to respect me. The phone rang. Max's name appeared on the screen. In the past, my heart would have leapt with hope, praying he was finally ready to apologize, ready to explain that everything had been a misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then it went silent. I continued sipping my coffee as though nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was Lena. I let it ring. Soon after, a text arrived from Max. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted it without replying. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to take a walk. I had not done that in months without an errand connected to them. It had always been a trip to the bank for transfers, the supermarket for their groceries, the pharmacy for Lena's prescriptions. But today, I walked simply because I wanted to. I strolled past the park where I used to take Max when he was a boy. I remembered that sweet child who would hug me tight and tell me I was the best mother in the world. When had he become a man who treated me like an ATM with feelings? When did I begin mistaking money for love? When did I start believing I had to buy my own son's affection? At the bank, where I had made so many transfers on their behalf, I paused at the door. The branch manager, Mr. Klein, noticed me through the glass and waved. I had known him for years. He had processed every one of my transfers to Max and Lena. He had watched my account shrink month after month to fill theirs. I stepped inside and walked straight to his office. "Mr. Klein," I said, "I need to cancel the automatic transfers I have set up." He looked at me in surprise. For 3 years, those transfers had been as constant as the sunrise. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen?" His concern was genuine, far more genuine than anything Max had shown me in recent years. "What happened is that I finally opened my eyes," I replied. "Cancel everything. And I also want information about how to secure my accounts. I do not want anyone else to access my money." As Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my phone would not stop ringing. Max, then Lena, then Max again. It was as though they had developed an instinct for when their source of income was at risk. I turned the phone off completely. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said as he handed me the documents, "forgive me for intruding, but through the years, I have seen you be extremely generous with your family. I only hope you are not being pressured into making these changes." His words struck me deeply. This man, who knew me only through financial transactions, expressed more genuine concern for me than my own son ever had. "I am not being pressured, Mr. Klein," I answered. "On the contrary, I have finally stopped pressuring myself." When I left the bank that day, I felt strangely light, as though I had left a massive burden behind in that office. For the first time in years, my money belonged entirely to me. I had no financial obligations to people who regarded me as a resource rather than as a person. I returned home and thought about all the things I had not done to please Max and Lena, the trips I had forfeited to save money for them, the friends I no longer saw because I was always available for their emergencies, the hobbies I had abandoned because every dollar I spent on myself meant $1 less for their needs. When I arrived home, 3 cars were parked outside my door. Max's, Lena's, and a third I did not recognize. I could see movement inside my house through the windows. My blood ran cold. They had keys. I had given them keys because I trusted them, because I thought they would one day care for me as I had cared for them. I breathed deeply before opening the door. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened the door and found a scene I will never forget. Max sat on my sofa with his head in his hands. Lena paced like an animal in a cage, and an older man I did not know rifled through papers on my dining table. My papers, my private documents. "What is happening here?" I asked, my voice louder than I had intended. All 3 of them looked at me as if I were the intruder in my own home. Lena was the first to speak, her voice carrying the same urgent desperation I had heard on the phone. "Renate, thank goodness you are here. We need to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation." "My situation?" I asked calmly, surprised by my own composure. "What situation?" "I am doing perfectly fine." Max finally raised his head and looked at me with eyes that had once belonged to an innocent child, but now reflected only financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank and they told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein said you also blocked our access to your accounts. We do not understand why you did that. Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s dressed in a gray suit and wearing a smile that inspired no confidence, approached and offered a hand. Mrs. Richter, I am Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental state and have asked me to evaluate the situation." I did not shake his hand. Instead, I went straight to the dining table and gathered my documents that he had been inspecting without permission. "These are my private papers. You have no right to review them without my consent." "Mom," Max interjected in the condescending tone he had perfected in recent years, "we are worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange lately. First you cut us off financially without explanation, then you do not answer our calls. We think you might need professional help." Lena moved closer and attempted to take my hand with the false tenderness she saved for moments when she wanted something. "Renate, dear, we know you are under a lot of stress. Perhaps the loneliness is affecting you more than you realize. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal." The word confusion echoed inside my head like an alarm. Now I understood why they had brought the lawyer. It was not about helping me. It was about declaring me mentally incompetent and seizing control of my finances. The same woman who had told me they had only invited special people to their wedding was now treating me as a senile old lady. "I am not confused," I said with a firmness that silenced the room. "I am clearer than I have been in years, and you will leave my house right now." Mr. Fisher interposed in the measured voice lawyers use when they wish to seem reasonable. "Mrs. Richter, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have a right to intervene if they believe your capacity to make financial decisions is impaired. They have documented several concerning behaviors. The laugh that escaped my throat was hoarse, almost cruel. "Such as," I demanded, "deciding that my money belongs to me? Deciding to stop financing the lives of 2 adults who treat me like refuse?" Lena sprang to her feet as if I had struck her. "We never treated you badly. You are part of our family. All of what you have will belong to us one day anyway. We are only accelerating the process." There it was, the raw, unvarnished truth. In their minds, I was already gone and they were merely collecting the inheritance in advance. It mattered not whether I had 70 years or 70 days left. To them, I was merely an ATM with legs that had become inconvenient. "Out," I said, pointing to the door. "All 3 of you must leave my house." Max rose, wearing the angry, petulant expression he used when denied. "Mom, we cannot simply go. We have obligations. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed. You cannot cut us off overnight." "Who says I cannot?" I raised my voice for the first time in the exchange. "For years I have paid rent that was not even in my name. I stocked a refrigerator in a home where I was not welcome. I financed a life that had no place for me." Mr. Fisher removed a folder from his briefcase and placed it on my table. "Mrs. Richter, we have prepared documents to facilitate this transition. A power of attorney that would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances more effectively. It would be temporary until you recover." I grabbed the folder and, without opening it, tossed it into the wastebasket. The only transition that will happen here is your exit to the front door." Lena began to cry, but her tears were not sorrowful. They were frustration made visible, anger held in check. "You cannot do this to us, Renati. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We took on responsibilities because we knew we could depend on you." "Those obligations were based on my money," I replied. "They were not based on my welfare, my joy, or my company, only on my money. Now that I have decided my money will be used for my life, I am suddenly a confused old woman who needs guardianship." Max moved forward, but I stepped back. He was no longer the child who ran into my arms when frightened. He was a 35-year-old man who viewed his mother as an obstacle between himself and a comfortable life paid for by others. "Mom, we made mistakes," he said, in a voice meant to convey remorse. "The wedding was a misunderstanding." Lena was anxious. I was under pressure. "We can fix this if you simply become reasonable again." Reasonable. The word tasted bitter. To be reasonable would mean continuing to fund their lives while they treated me as a stranger. It would mean pretending it did not wound me to be excluded from the most important day of my only son's life. Mr. Fisher closed his papers with the efficiency of someone accustomed to proposals being refused. "Mrs. Richter, this is not finished. Your family has legal options. If your decisions are truly irrational due to mental health concerns, a judge could appoint a guardian." His words struck like a blow. I realized this was not a manipulative family visit, but a genuine legal threat. They intended to declare me incompetent and take charge of my affairs. "Mr. Fisher," I said, meeting his gaze steadily, "I suggest you research thoroughly before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances without fault for 40 years, who raised her son alone after her husband died, who ran a household and worked honorably until retirement, and who until last week supported 2 fully capable adults." Lena stopped her tears and regarded me with a coldness that finally showed her true nature. "This will not end like this, Renate. We have rights and lawyers too." "By all means," I replied. "Retain every lawyer you desire. With your own funds, of course, because mine are no longer available to underwrite your legal tantrums." They moved toward the door with the wounded dignity of people unaccustomed to being denied. Before he left, Max turned back to issue one last warning. "Mom, this will end very badly for you. You will be alone with no one to care for you when you truly need help." "Max," I answered with sorrow that was tempered by crystalline clarity, "I am already alone. The difference is that now it is by my choice, not by your neglect." As I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room surrounded by the most exquisite silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night I could not sleep, but not from sadness or regret. I was awake from adrenaline, invigorated by having reclaimed control of my life. I lay in bed planning my next steps with the precision of a general preparing for battle. If Max and Lena wished to wage war, I would meet them with strategy, not with emotion. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was dressed and ready to proceed. My first stop was the office of attorney Mr. Weber, a man I had met years ago when I was handling my husband's will. Unlike Mr. Fisher, whom Max and Lena had brought, Mr. Weber had an impeccable reputation and specialized in protecting the rights of the elderly. "Mrs. Richter," he told me as I explained the situation, "what your children tried to do yesterday is more common than you think. It is called elder financial abuse, and it is a federal crime. The fact that they entered your house without permission and reviewed your private documents also constitutes a violation." His words both calmed and worried me. They calmed me because they confirmed I was not crazy, that what had happened was truly abusive. They worried me because I realized the situation was more serious than I had thought. "We have to document everything," Mr. Weber continued. "Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. We will also change your will to protect your assets from future manipulation attempts." We spent 3 hours reviewing my financial records. Mr. Weber whistled when he saw the total sum, $33,400 in 3 years. "Mrs. Richter, with this money, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, and enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you completely financed the lives of 2 adults who did not even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding." When I left Mr. Weber's office, I had a complete plan. First, I would change all the locks on my house. Second, I would install a security system with cameras to protect myself from future surprise visits. Third, I would open a new bank account at a different bank where they had no contact. And fourth, I would start living the life I had postponed for years. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, had known me for years because I was always buying things to fix Max and Lena's apartment. This time was different. "Mrs. Richter, what brings you here today?" "Another emergency with your son?" he asked, with the familiarity of a person who had silently witnessed my wasted generosity. "No, Mr. Summer. This time it is for my own house. I need to change all the locks, and I want them to be of the best quality." He looked at me surprised, but asked no questions. While I was choosing the locks, his son, Ethan, who installed security systems, came by. It was Providence in action. "Ethan," I told him, "I also need to install surveillance cameras, the complete system." The price is not an issue. While they were preparing everything for the installation the next day, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Lena calling from someone else's phone because I had blocked her number after the previous day's confrontation. "Renate, it is Lena. Please do not hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults." "Speak," I said dryly. "Listen, I understand you are upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I have talked about it and we want to make it up to you. How about we have a special dinner to celebrate our wedding with you? We can do it at your house. Cook together like we used to." The manipulation in her words was so obvious that I almost had to laugh. "Lena, how much rent do you owe exactly?" The silence on the other end confirmed that I had hit a nerve. Well, it is 2 months, $1,000 total. But I am not just calling for that, Renate. We really miss you in our lives. Do you miss me or my money?" I asked directly. "Both," she replied with a surprising honesty. "Renate, I will not lie to you. Yes, we need your financial help, but we love you too. You are important to us. If I am so important," I said. "Why was I not important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I not important enough to get a call that does not ask for money? When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing?" Another silence. We both knew the answer. Never. "Lena, I'm only going to explain this to you once. For 3 years, you have treated me like an ATM with feelings. You used me. You ignored me. You humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the worst possible way. Now that the money is running out, you suddenly discover you love me." "Renate, please." I cut her off. "There is no please. You made your choice when you decided I was not special enough to be at your wedding. Now I am making mine." I hung up and turned the phone off completely. I did not want any more interruptions on my day of liberation. That afternoon, I went to the beauty salon I had not been to in over a year. I always canceled my appointments because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or because the money I had set aside for myself became an emergency for them. "Mrs. Richter," my favorite hairstylist, Cynthia, called out. "What a surprise. I thought you had forgotten us." "I did not forget you, Cynthia. I just forgot that I also deserved to be pampered. I treated myself to the full treatment. Cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling guilty. While Cynthia worked on my hair, she told me about her life, her children, her dreams. It was refreshing to have a conversation that did not revolve around Max and Lena's needs. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter," she said when she was done. "But more than that, you look free." Did something good happen? Yes, Cynthia. I finally learned to say no. When I got home that afternoon, there was a car in front of my door that I did not recognize. My heart raced for a moment, thinking Max and Lena might have come back with reinforcements, but as I got closer, I saw an older woman sitting on the steps of my porch. "Mrs. Richter?" she asked as I got out of the car. "Yes, that is me. Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We have been neighbors for years, but we have never had a chance to talk. Yesterday, I heard very loud voices in your house, and I got worried. Is everything okay?" Her sincere concern touched me deeply. Here was a stranger who showed more interest in my well-being than my own son. "Come in, Mrs. Brooks. I will make you a coffee, and I will tell you a story you will not believe." While I was making coffee, I told her the whole situation. Eleanor listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. And when I finished my story, her eyes were filled with tears. "Mrs. Richter," she said, "you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I also thought it was my duty to finance her adult life. I also believed she would not love me if I did not give her money. What happened? I cut off the money when I realized she only called me when she needed something. At first it was terrible. She threatened me, emotionally blackmailed me, tried to make me feel guilty. But after 6 months, my daughter called to genuinely apologize. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not on money. Her words gave me hope and confirmed that I had made the right decision. Do you think Max and Lena will understand one day? Maybe yes, maybe no, she answered honestly, but that is no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Richter. Your responsibility now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about whether Max and Lena had money for rent, for food, for their whims. I went to bed thinking about myself, my plans, my future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next day, Ethan and Mr. Summer came at 8 o'clock in the morning to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone did not stop ringing from unknown numbers. Lena was still trying to contact me from different phones, but I had developed a new skill, completely ignoring calls that did not suit me. Mrs. Richter, Ethan said as he installed the cameras, this system will give you absolute peace of mind. You can see from your phone who is coming to your house even when you are not here, and if someone breaks in without permission, an alert is automatically sent to the police. The irony was not lost on me. I was installing a security system to protect myself from my own son, but it did not hurt as much as it used to. It was simply a practical measure to maintain my newfound peace. While they were working, I decided to do something I had not done in years. Call my sister Diana in Chicago. We had lost touch because every time we talked, I would tell her about Max and Lena's successes, about how much money I had spent on them, about how proud I was to be able to help them. I now realized that our conversations had become financial reports disguised as family news. Renate, Diana answered, surprised. Sister, how are you? We have not spoken in months. I am good, Diana. Better than good. I am calling you to tell you that I have finally come to my senses. I told her the whole story from the beginning. The secret wedding, the humiliation, the visit with the lawyer, my decision to cut off the funding. Diana listened to me in silence, and when I was done, her answer surprised me. Renate, sister, it was about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you brag about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to tell you something, but I did not know how. What did you want to tell me? That Max never spoke lovingly about you when I saw him at family gatherings. It was always, my mom helped me with this, or my mom bought me that, but never, I miss my mom, or I love my mom. It was as if you were a service provider, not a person. Her words hurt, but it was a necessary pain. Like when a doctor cleans an infected wound, it hurts, but it is part of the healing. You know what else I noticed? Diana continued. Lena always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renate is no longer here, we can remodel her house. Or when we inherit, we will invest in the business. As if they were waiting for you to die to really live. This revelation hit me like a bucket of ice water. They did not just see me as an ATM. They viewed me only as a temporary obstacle standing between them and their money. While I was doing everything I could to keep them happy, they were already planning a future that excluded me. After my conversation with Diana, I sat in the kitchen, overwhelmed, trying to process everything. I thought about my life. Decades of marriage to a man who truly loved me, 35 years of raising my son alone after his death, and 3 exhausting years of financing 2 adults who regarded me as nothing more than a $100,000 barrier. The doorbell rang, and the camera showed Eleanor standing there with a mug in her hands. I opened the door, and she handed me a freshly brewed coffee. I thought you might need some company after what you shared with me yesterday, she said with that warm, genuine smile that I had already grown to appreciate. We sat together in the living room, and she told me more about her own experiences. My daughter told me the exact same things Lena tells you, she said. You are like a second mother to me. We are special to you. One day, everything will be ours anyway. Those are rehearsed phrases, Mrs. Richter. They learn them straight from the Handbook of Emotional Manipulation. Do you actually think such a handbook exists? I asked, half joking. Not officially, she said with a bitter smile, but it feels like they are all reading from the same script. Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3. When she resists, question her mental health. We laughed together, but it was not a joyful laugh. It was the tragic recognition of predictable patterns in our own children's behavior. "Did you feel guilty when you stopped giving your daughter money?" I asked Eleanor quietly. "Every single day for the first 3 months," she admitted. "But then I began to see changes." She got a second job. Her husband stopped spending weekends playing golf and started searching for extra work. They learned to live within their means, and more importantly, they learned to see me as a person rather than a resource. That afternoon, I finally did something I had been postponing for years. I visited my husband's grave. I had always found excuses not to go, claiming Max or Lena needed something urgent, or telling myself the taxi fare would be better spent on one of their endless emergencies. The cemetery was quiet and peaceful. Robert's grave looked neglected, the flowers withered, because I had not visited for months. I sat on the grass next to his headstone and spoke to him as though he were still alive. "Robert, my love, I think I lost myself somewhere along the way. After you died, I put every bit of energy into Max. I wanted to be the best mother possible, hoping it would make up for the fact that he grew up without a father. But in the process, I forgot to be myself. Our son has become someone I no longer recognize, or perhaps he was always this way and I refused to see it. His wife? Well, you know exactly how she is. The money you left for me to live in peace, I spent it all taking care of them. But no more, my love. I have learned I cleaned his grave, replaced the flowers, and stayed there for another hour, just sitting in the quiet peace. For the first time in years, I felt no pressure to rush home to deal with Max and Lena's fabricated crises. When I finally returned, I saw 3 cars parked in front of my house. My heart raced, but this time I was prepared. The cameras revealed Max, Lena, and 2 unfamiliar people, all looking agitated as they pointed at my home. I did not get out of the car. Instead, I immediately called Mr. Weber, my lawyer. "Mr. Weber, they are here again, and this time they have brought more people." "What should I do?" "Do not leave your car, Mrs. Richter," he replied firmly. "I will be there right away, and I will call the police." After our conversation yesterday, I requested a temporary restraining order. They are not allowed on your property. Within minutes, Mr. Weber and 2 police patrol cars arrived. I sat in the car as officers spoke with Max and Lena. I watched my son gesticulate furiously and saw Lena break into tears again. But this time, I felt nothing. An officer approached and told me it was safe to come out. As I stepped out, Max shouted from the street, "Mom, this is ridiculous. We are your family. You cannot call the police on your own son." "Family does not threaten lawsuits for incompetence," I replied calmly. "Family does not break into a home without permission. Family does not treat their mother like an ATM from across the street," Lena screamed. "You are going to pay us everything you owe us. You signed bills with us. You cannot just abandon us." Mr. Weber intervened sharply. "Mrs. Brooks, all future communication must go through my office. And I strongly suggest you consult with a lawyer before making threats, because my client has full documentation of every voluntary payment she made over the past 3 years. I watched as they drove away, defeated but clearly not finished. For the first time in this nightmare, I felt strong. I had legal protection, I had Eleanor's emotional support, and above all, I had clarity. That night, Eleanor invited me to her house for dinner. I met her daughter, who was visiting, and saw what a healthy family bond looked like. They spoke with respect, listened sincerely to one another, and shared laughter without any trace of manipulation. Her daughter never once asked for money. "I wanted that with Max," I confessed, when her daughter left. "Perhaps you will one day," Eleanor said gently, "but first he must learn that you are a person worthy of respect, not just a source of income." For the first time in weeks, I went to bed with hope. The following days passed quietly, although my cameras often showed Max and Lena circling my home, sometimes parking briefly but never coming to the door. Mr. Weber had advised me to log every visit, so I kept meticulous records with dates and times. "Their persistence will only strengthen our case for a permanent restraining order," he had assured me. On Friday morning, I was peacefully having breakfast when the doorbell rang. The cameras showed a young woman neatly dressed, holding a folder, and wearing a professional smile. Something about her demeanor told me this was not a social call. "Good morning, Mrs. Renata Richter," she said as I opened the door. "I am a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We have received a report that you may be at risk, and I need to conduct a wellness check." My blood went cold. Max and Lena had escalated again. This time, it was no longer about private threats. They had involved the government. May I see your identification? I asked carefully. Of course. She presented an ID that appeared legitimate. I am social worker Mrs. Schmidt. May I come inside to talk with you? I allowed her in, knowing refusal might harm me more. She sat down in the living room, opened her folder, and began reading from her form. Mrs. Richter, we have received reports that you have shown sudden changes in your financial behavior, that you have cut communication with your family, and that you have displayed paranoia by installing unnecessary security systems. We were also told you refused medical and legal help offered by your loved ones. Every word was calculated to make me sound like a delusional old woman. I immediately recognized Lena's phrasing. She had always been skilled at twisting words. Mrs. Schmidt, I said firmly, I would like to call my lawyer before answering any questions. This is not a legal interrogation, ma'am. It is a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, there should be no problem speaking with me. The phrase enraged me. It was the same manipulative logic abusers used. If you are innocent, you should not object to invasions of privacy. I will call my lawyer, I said. You can wait or return another day, but I will not answer questions without legal representation. Mr. Weber arrived within 20 minutes. He checked Mrs. Schmidt's ID, then said coldly, I hope you have a court order to be here, because my client is under legal representation, and any unauthorized questioning constitutes harassment. We have reports from concerned family members, she responded less confidently, and it is our duty to investigate. What family? Mr. Weber asked sharply. The same family who tried to coerce her into signing a power of attorney without counsel? The same family who broke into her home and searched her private documents? The same family who excluded her from events while living off her money? He placed a folder on the table. Here is full documentation of the financial and emotional abuse. Over $33,000 taken in 3 years. Systematic social exclusion. Repeated emotional blackmail. If anyone here deserves investigation, it is not my client. Mrs. Schmidt flipped through the evidence with clear discomfort. The narrative she had been fed did not match reality. Finally, she turned to me. Mrs. Richter, can you explain why you so suddenly stopped supporting your son financially? Because I finally realized they were using me, I replied calmly. Because I understood that, to them, I was not a mother, but a bank account. Because I was tired of financing the lives of people who treated me as nothing more than an obstacle. But do you not feel it is your responsibility to help your family? She asked. The question outraged me. Miss Schmidt, my responsibility as a mother was to raise my son until he reached adulthood, to educate him, and to provide him with the tools to live as an independent man. My son is 35 years old, married, and perfectly capable of supporting himself. Financing his adult life is not my responsibility. It is a choice, and I have chosen not to do it anymore. Mr. Weber interjected firmly. Miss Schmidt, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old man to be unable to pay his own rent without the help of his 71-year-old mother? Mrs. Schmidt remained silent for a moment, clearly reconsidering her position. Mrs. Richter, she asked cautiously, do you manage your own finances? Yes, I answered. I can show you my bank statements, my investments, my tax payments. Everything is current and in order. Do you live independently? She continued. As you can see, my home is clean. I care for myself. I drive my own car, and I maintain healthy social relationships with my neighbors. Do you take any medication? Only vitamins and occasionally aspirin. I do not have any medical conditions that require medication. Mr. Weber added, my client has recently undergone extensive medical examinations as part of our legal process. She is in perfect physical and mental condition. Mrs. Schmidt closed her folder. Mrs. Richter, based on this conversation and the documentation I have reviewed, I see no evidence that you are at risk or in need of intervention. I will close this case. After she left, Mr. Weber and I sat in silence for a few moments. Finally, he spoke. Renata, this is going to escalate. Max and Lena are spending money they do not have in an attempt to have you declared incompetent. Does that mean they are desperate? I asked. It means exactly that. What else can they do? They could file a lawsuit for incompetence. It is expensive and difficult to win, but if they find a sympathetic judge and a psychiatrist willing to testify, they could succeed in having a guardian assigned. The thought terrified me. They could take control of my money. They can try, he reassured me, but we have strong evidence that you are fully competent and that they are motivated by greed rather than concern. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent. "Sister," she said after listening carefully, "do you realize how far they are willing to go for money? They are risking family relationships, spending money on lawyers and doctors, destroying their own reputation, all to get access to your account again." Her words struck me deeply. Max and Lena had revealed their true nature. There was no going back, no chance of genuine reconciliation. To them, I had never been a mother or a respected mother-in-law. I had always been nothing more than money on legs. The revelation was painful but also freeing. I no longer had to wonder if I was doing the right thing. I no longer had to feel guilty for protecting myself. They had proven themselves that my well-being meant nothing compared to my money. That evening, Eleanor visited with a surprise. She had invited her garden club friends to meet me. "Renata," she said warmly, "these are my friends. Cynthia, who you already know from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Elfrida. We've all experienced similar struggles with abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing stories. Maria had set firm boundaries with a brother who constantly demanded money. Carmen had cut ties with her daughter, who only visited when she needed financial support. Elfrida had rewritten her will after discovering her grandchildren treated her as their retirement plan. What hurts me most, I confessed, is not the money I lost, but realizing I never truly had the love I thought I had. "Renata," Elfrida said with the wisdom of her 80 years, "true love cannot be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real." Her words were balm for my wounded heart. She was right. I had purchased attention, not love. I had financed an illusion. "You know what I have discovered?" I said to my new friends. "That loneliness surrounded by people who do not love you is worse than being alone. At least now, when I am by myself, I am in good company." Everyone laughed, and we toasted to our newfound wisdom. That night, after they had gone, I sat in my garden under the stars. They seemed brighter, or perhaps my eyes were finally clear. For the first time in my adult life, I was financially free. I had no obligations to anyone but myself. Instead of scaring me, the thought filled me with excitement. I could travel when I wished. I could remodel my home. I could buy myself clothes I liked. I could donate to causes I cared about. I could invest in my future instead of funding the present of ungrateful people. Freedom tasted like hope, and for the first time in years, I wanted to plan. A month after the social worker's visit, I thought I had finally won. I had settled into a beautiful routine. I enjoyed quiet breakfasts with the newspaper. I tended my garden, met Eleanor or one of my new friends for lunch, and in the afternoons I returned to painting, a passion I had abandoned when I became Max and Lena's financier. But one Thursday morning, as I painted flowers on my new easel, Mr. Weber arrived at my door with a grim expression that chilled me. "Renata, we need to talk," he said. "Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They are asking for a legal guardian to be assigned to you." The words struck me like stones. I knew it was possible, but hearing it aloud was terrifying. Does that mean they could take control of my money? If a judge decides you are unable to manage your affairs, yes. Max could be placed as your guardian, with full authority over your finances. I collapsed onto the sofa, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal. My own son wanted to legally strip me of my independence to steal my money. "Mr. Weber, what evidence do they have?" "You know I am fully competent. They have statements from 3 witnesses claiming you behaved erratically. They submitted unpaid medical bills and alleged medications you supposedly purchased but never used, but that is a lie. I have no outstanding medical bills and no hoarded medication. I know, Renata. But they have fabricated convincing evidence. They also have a statement from Dr. Lehman claiming you refused a psychiatric evaluation, which they present as proof of mental decline. The manipulation was cruel. They had twisted my refusal into proof. My attempt to protect myself was being used as a weapon against me. "Who are the 3 witnesses?" I asked. Mr. Weber checked his documents. "Lena, of course, a neighbor named Mr. Davis, and your pharmacist, Mr. Green." Mr. Davis was the unpleasant man across the street who had always disliked me because my visitors parked near his home. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I could not imagine why he would turn against me. "I need to speak with Mr. Green," I told Mr. Weber. "Something is wrong." That afternoon we went to the pharmacy together. Mr. Green greeted me, surprised and uneasy. "Mrs. Richter, it is good to see you." "How are you, Mr. Green?" I was told you signed a statement saying I act erratically with my medications. His face turned red. Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law came in weeks ago and asked about your prescriptions. She said she was worried because you were behaving strangely, and what did you tell her? I explained that you only purchase vitamins and aspirin occasionally, that you do not have regular prescriptions. But she insisted that this meant you were neglecting your health. Mr. Weber asked sharply, "Did you sign a document?" She brought me a paper to sign saying it was for insurance. I did not realize it was for a lawsuit. It said you had irregular medication purchases. My pharmacist had been deceived into signing something he did not understand. Lena's manipulation was relentless. "Mr. Green," I said firmly, "I need you to write a statement explaining what really happened and clarifying that I have no medication issues." "Of course, Mrs. Richter." I am very sorry. Afterward, we went to confront Mr. Davis. He greeted us with hostility. "What do you want?" he snapped. "Mr. Davis," Mr. Weber said calmly, "I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior." "That is right. That woman is crazy. She's been acting strangely for weeks. Can you specify what you observed?" "She installed cameras as if she lived in a war zone. Strangers come and go all the time, and I saw her yelling at her family in the street. I realized then he had twisted everything out of context. The cameras were for my safety. The strangers were my friends. The yelling was me defending myself from Max and Lena's intrusions." "Mr. Davis," I said firmly, "do you know why I installed those cameras?" "No, and I do not care. To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my house without permission and threatened me." "That is what a crazy person would say," he replied cruelly. There was no way to reason with him. His statement was based on superficial observations, maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Weber and I sat down to plan our defense. "Renati, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who is an expert in assessing mental capacity. She can officially confirm that you are completely competent. What if Max and Lena have bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they have already decided to declare me incompetent?" "Renade, the legal system is not perfect, but it is not completely corrupt either. We have solid evidence of your mental competence and their financial motivations. We are going to fight this." The next day, I went to my appointment with Dr. Moore. She was a woman in her 50s with kind but astute eyes. "Mrs. Richter, I am going to ask you a series of questions and tests to assess your mental capacity. Take your time and answer honestly." For 2 hours, she asked me questions about my memory, reasoning ability, financial understanding, and emotional health. She also gave me cognitive tests and asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems. "Mrs. Richter," she said at the end, "your results are well above average for your age. You are not only mentally competent, but your cognitive function is excellent." "Doctor, why do you think my family is doing this?" "Based on what you have told me and the documents I have reviewed, this seems to be a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it is more common than people think. I left the consultation feeling validated but also sad. The professional confirmation of my mental health was a relief, but it also confirmed that the lawsuit was real and necessary. That afternoon, Eleanor organized an emergency meeting with all our friends from the garden club. When I told them about the incompetence lawsuit, everyone was outraged. "Renate," Maria said, "we will testify in your favor. We have been with you for weeks, and anyone can see that you are doing great." "Better than great," Cynthia added. "You are clearer and stronger than many 40-year-old women I know." Alfreda, with her 80-year-old wisdom, took my hands. "Renate, my dear, what your children are doing is nothing new. For generations, greedy children have tried to declare their parents insane to get their money, but you have something many of these victims did not have: documentation, legal support, and friends who can testify for you." Her words gave me hope. I was not alone in this fight. I had an army of strong women who had witnessed my transformation firsthand. "You know what the saddest thing about all this is?" I said. "That Max and Lena are willing to destroy any future possibility of reconciliation for money. Even if I were willing to forgive everything so far, there is no going back from this." "And maybe that is for the best," Cynthia replied. "At least now you know exactly who they are and you can act accordingly." That night, for the first time since this nightmare began, I really cried, not out of sadness, but out of grief. I said my final goodbye to the son I thought I had, to the dream of a loving family, to the illusion that unconditional love was reciprocated. But something new also emerged within me, an iron determination not to let myself be stripped, not only of my money, but also of my dignity and freedom. The war had officially begun, but I was ready to fight. The trial came 3 weeks later. I woke up early, put on my best black suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with a determination I had never felt before. Today, not only my mental capacity would be judged, but also my dignity as a person, my right to live free from abuse, my value beyond my bank account. Mr. Weber came at 7 o'clock in the morning to go over our strategy one last time. Renate, remember, the burden of proof is on them. They have to prove that you are incompetent. We just have to show that you are not. And what if the judge is already biased? Judge Miller has a reputation for being fair. I researched his past cases, and he does not automatically favor families. He is dedicated to protecting the rights of the elderly. We arrived at the courthouse at 9 o'clock in the morning. In the hallway, I saw Max in a new suit that he had probably bought for the occasion, and Lena dressed in black as if she were at a funeral. Maybe it was one, the funeral of our family relationship. When our eyes met, Max avoided my gaze, but Lena held my eyes with a coldness that confirmed that for her, this was just a business transaction. Their lawyer was an older, elegant man with the kind of confidence that comes from winning similar cases before. When he began his opening statement, his strategy was clear: to portray me as a confused old woman who had been manipulated by strangers to alienate me from my loving family. "Your Honor," he said in a solemn voice, "Mrs. Renate Richter has shown a clear mental decline in recent months. She has cut off all financial support for her family without a rational explanation. She has installed unnecessary security systems due to paranoia and has isolated herself from her loved ones under the influence of neighbors and lawyers who are obviously taking advantage of her vulnerable situation." Every word had been carefully chosen to make my self-empowerment sound like dementia and my freedom sound like external manipulation. Then they called their witnesses. Lena was the first to testify, and her performance was Oscar-worthy. She cried as she described how I had completely changed, how I had become hostile and paranoid, how I had isolated myself from the family that loved me. "Your Honor," she said in a trembling voice, "Renate has always been like a second mom to me. Seeing her mental decline has been devastating. We just want to help her get the care she needs." Lies wrapped in convincing tears. When Mr. Weber cross-examined her, the cracks in her story began to appear. "Mrs. Schuster, can you tell the court when was the last time you called my client without asking for money?" Lena stammered. "Well, we always talked about many things." "Can you give me a specific date?" "I do not remember exact dates." "Is it true that you and your husband got married without inviting my client?" "It was a very small ceremony." "Is it true that when my client asked about the wedding, you told her that you had only invited special people?" Lena's face turned red. Those words were taken out of context. What would be the right context to tell your mother-in-law that she is not a special person? She could not answer convincingly. Max was next. Seeing him on the witness stand, swearing to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental health, was one of the most painful moments of my life. This was the boy I had raised alone, the one I had dedicated my entire life to. "My mom has always been very generous with us," he testified, "but lately she has become erratic and irrational. We believe she is being manipulated by people who are taking advantage of her." When Mr. Weber cross-examined him, the mask fell completely. "Mr. Richter, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?" "I do not know the exact amount." "Does $33,400 sound about right?" "Maybe. She has always been generous." "And how many times have you visited your mother without asking her for money?" The silence was deafening. "Is it true that you and your wife broke into my client's house without permission and checked her private documents?" "We were worried about her." "Is it true that you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney?" "We wanted to help her manage her finances." "Do you, at 35 years old, need the help of your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent?" Max could not answer with dignity. Mr. Davis testified about my supposed erratic behaviors, but when Mr. Weber asked him for details, he admitted that he had never spoken to me directly, and that all his information was based on superficial observations. Dr. Lehman testified that my refusal to undergo an evaluation was proof of mental decline. But Mr. Weber submitted the documentation of our evaluation with Dr. Moore, which completely refuted his conclusions. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber first called Mr. Green, my pharmacist, who explained how he had been tricked into signing a statement that distorted my medication buying habits. Dr. Moore testified about my excellent mental state and presented the results of the cognitive tests, which had been flawless. Mr. Summer from the hardware store testified about my mental competence and explained that my decisions to cancel automatic transfers were completely rational and had been processed correctly. Eleanor and my friends from the garden club testified about my clarity, my newfound vitality, and my ability to maintain healthy social relationships. Finally, it was my turn to testify. I stood up with dignity and walked to the witness stand, feeling the weight of 71 years of experience, of wisdom gained through pain, of strength discovered in adversity. Mr. Weber guided me through my testimony, letting me tell my whole story. The $33,400 spent in 3 years, the humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the constant emotional manipulation, the violation of my privacy, the legal threats. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Weber finally asked, why did you decide to stop financial support for your son and daughter-in-law? Because I finally understood that what I was getting from them was not love, I replied in a clear, loud voice. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I as a person was not. Do you regret your decision? I only regret that it took me so long to make it. Max's lawyer tried to make me appear confused during his cross-examination, but I answered every one of his questions with clarity and precision. When he tried to imply that my new friendships had manipulated me, I explained to him that for the first time in years, I had relationships based on mutual respect and not on financial interest. In his closing argument, Max's lawyer insisted that I was a victim of external manipulation. Mr. Weber's rebuttal was devastating. Your Honor, what we have seen here is not the case of an incompetent old woman, but that of a woman who has finally found the strength to free herself from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no real medical evidence of mental incompetence. What they have presented is frustration, because their source of income has decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect her own resources. Judge Miller retired to deliberate for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When he came back, his expression was serious but clear. After reviewing all the evidence presented, he began, it is obvious to this court that Mrs. Renee Richter is in full possession of her mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm her cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, as painful as they may be for her family, are completely rational and within her rights. My heart began to beat faster. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence suggests that this lawsuit is motivated by financial interest rather than by genuine concern for Mrs. Richter's well-being. The court completely denies the request for guardianship. I had won. I had not only won the lawsuit, but also my freedom, my dignity, my right to live free from the abuse of those who supposedly loved me. When we left the courthouse, I saw Max and Lena talking angrily with their lawyer. Lena gave me a look of pure hatred before she walked away. Max looked at me one last time, and for a second I saw something that could have been regret, but it was already too late. That night, Eleanor organized a celebration at my house with all our friends. We toasted to justice, to freedom, to the sisterhood of strong women who support each other. Renata, Elfrida told me, today you did not just win a trial. You won back your life. She was right. For the first time in years, the future was completely mine. I could travel. I could love. I could create. I could live without fear, without guilt, without manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment near the city center. I donated half of my money to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the other half, I began to live the life I had always wanted. I traveled through Europe, took art classes, and joined volunteer groups. I never heard from Max and Lena again. I heard from others that they had to move to a smaller apartment and that Lena had found a job for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and independence. Some nights, when I look at the stars from my new balcony, I think about the woman I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, believing I had to buy love. That woman is gone, and in her place, someone has been born who has understood a fundamental truth. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renati. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. If you liked my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I am always curious about what you all think. And also, write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.